I've changed you to be a co-host now, okay?
So I'm recording, okay. So let's start.
Okay, so just to make sure you're okay with that, Victoria, Purva, that we're recording it, yeah? Okay, I wanted to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's just jump in right to the code, okay? I'll try to make it like top down, start with the overview of what's going on. And I'll start with Unity, right? And with the app in Unity, and we'll go over the basics, and I'll try to explain as much as I can. And feel free to stop me and just ask anything if you don't understand. That's fine. So let's start. I'll share my screen. Oh, I see that now you're the host. So I need you to allow me to share my screen.
Okay. Yeah, try now.
Okay, now it's great. So one sec, where is my Unity? Okay, here we are. So this is basically, once you, I guess that you all has managed to download our plugin with Unity. There is, on our side, there is a tutorial, a step-by-step introduction, how to download, start the plugin, how to build for Unity. Is there anyone here, Pruva, Victoria, who's been struggling with that? It's not this, I'm just trying to understand, because most of the people we were dealing with, they've passed this phase successfully, okay? So I assume that you've passed this and you have seen this screen, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go over. So in Unity, every object is a object in the 3D world. Even if it's not gonna be rendered to the screen or in the game, still it has the attributes of a 3D object. And by that, I mean that it has, if you see here to the right, it has components. So one of the components, this one is the basic component, is transform. Transform means where that object is positioned in the 3D world. So in Unity, you have a root object, and the root object is where it's like you can think about it as the start of the beginning of the coordinate system, right? If you had to draw a 3D axis on your notebook or something like that, so you have to start somewhere, right? So this is the 0 point. And everything underneath that root object is relational in its position to the root object. So if I look here and I look at the transform, so the position is relative to the root object, okay? So if the root object is at 0, this one is at 50, okay? But if the root object is at 50, so this one is at 100, etc., etc. Okay, it adds the components. So this is basically, I think, every 3D engine every 3D engine that works in a hierarchical way follows the same rules, okay? So it's not something that Unity invented. Anyway, so we have directional light, we have canvas. I don't want to get into this right now, maybe later. We have event system. Also, I don't want to get into it, but there is something that I would like to get into it, and it's the air session origin, okay? So basically, in order to start an AR app with Unity, you have to use the Air Foundation, right? So Air Foundation is the one that's responsible to enable the camera and using the information that comes from the operating system with regarding to where the camera is located in the world. So you can think about it like Okay, so let's say I have an object right here. So we can think about it like, you see the camera, it moves, right? And you see that the position is changed here, the Z position, okay? The same thing happens during the app. Even if you don't see it, once the app is running, AirKit, the component in the operating system that is responsible of the camera, moves the camera in the virtual world, okay? So this is done automatically by the operating system. You don't need to handle that. And this is the beauty of Unity, because Unity says, okay, so basically there is a camera object is something that is a part of Unity even before there was augmented reality. Because every 3D game, even in the virtual world, has to have a camera. It's a concept. Camera is a concept of a viewport that I can look at the world, okay? So a camera, we have camera. So this camera specifically is controlled by the operating system. And this one is the Air camera. And how do I know that? Because it has a component here called Air Camera Manager, okay? And Air Camera Manager is a component that Unity has provided with their Air Foundation package, okay? Up till now, are we all good? Is there any question? Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna move forward. So we have that camera, and we have this one is the Air session. I'll get to it in a minute. I want to start with this one. This one is the sample main. So as you may know, every program has a main entry, right? If you write in Java or in C, it's the same. You have a main, you must have some kind of an entry to your app. So this object represents the main function of the app, okay? And I tried to make it as simple as I could. Like you can see here that this object, it also has a transform, even though it's not rendered, right? I don't care about the rendering. I don't care about how it's gonna look, because it has no representation in the real world. It's just because I have to use a 3D object in order to add scripts, add my logic, okay? So I have to have a sample main object, okay? So I just added an object, and you see you can add components. So I add my component, which is sample app main. I'm gonna show you to you in a minute, but you can see that here, you see that I have cube prefab, reset anchor prefab, status label, camera manager, etc., etc. All these are the objects that comprise my app, okay? So I'm gonna use them within my script, and I'm gonna show you to it in a minute. So let's go to this script. I guess I'll have to stop the sharing and reshare. One second, I'm gonna switch to the visual code, okay? 1 second. Okay, here it is. Okay, so this is the sample app main, right? I just double clicked it, okay? And this is the script that is attached to the object that we talked about earlier, okay? So what do we have here? We have mono behavior. I really hope you're gonna go over the concepts of Unity, because mono behavior is one of the fundamentals of Unity. And by that, I mean that almost every script in Unity is derived from mono behavior, okay? And mono behavior is a way to allow the user to handle the state of the object, okay, in a certain rate. Because as you know, in a game, you have a frame rate. Every frame you can do manipulation to the objects, and you can update them at the rate of the frames. It's like animation, right? When you do animation, you change the object in between the ticks, right? You have a tick, and you need to update the object, and it's get rendered. So model behavior is let's say it has its it's like a framework, okay? And it has several functions that you can take advantage of, like awake. Awake is every time the first time the object is instantiated, it's called its awake function. You can override it and add your information, add the things that you need in order to later on use the object. So here, what I do on my awake, you can think about the awake as the constructor. Do you know that like in an object-oriented concept where you have okay? So it's like the constructor of the class. So when awake is called, what I'm doing, I'm trying to initialize all my properties. So the first property is the main camera. And as you can see, I'll refer to the camera manager. And the camera manager, you see here, is a serialized field. And by that, I mean, if you remember, before we jumped into the code, I showed you that we have those boxes underneath the component. If you want me to go back there, I'll show it to you. It's like all the attributes that I'm gonna use that are instantiated outside of that class. So I have the camera manager, which is provided via that box, okay? So it's like a drag and drop. I'm gonna show it to you in a minute, but you can refer to that field as an initialized one, even though I didn't initialize it here specifically, okay? So camera manager, I'm gonna take that camera manager. If you remember, a camera manager is the one that comes from Air Foundation. So that's the managed camera. So bottom line, it's just my way to get a handle of the main camera, okay? That's it, that's all I'm doing here. And now I'm starting to initialize things with librecite. Librecite is the handle that connects, you remember that I told you that there is a thin layer that connects the SDK, the C++ SDK that sits on the Xcode, on the iOS, and Unity. And that thick layer, so that thin layer is in C Sharp, and it needs to be initialized. So I'm doing that here. I'm saying, okay, so the first function that I initialize is to Unity object. So let's go back to that later on, okay? You can dismiss this one for now. And the other function that I initialize is the onStatus. So you need to understand that recite, once you start the library, the SDK, it goes through a certain states. It starts with uninitialized, then when you call initialize, it goes to initializing, and then it gets to mapping, and when you stop it, it goes to stopping, and it has its own state machine, okay? So what I do here, I wanna hook up on some of the statuses and do some stuff. So like here, I wanna put some text when the status is changed to init, okay? So you understand that this one is a callback, okay? Every time the status is being updated, this Lambda function is being called, okay? And each time I get a different status, the status that the library is in. So let's say I got an init status, so I update the label to something here, I call it mapping, doesn't matter. And I instantiate the anchor. Okay, so anchor is the first object that recite exposes to the user. And what an anchor is, anchor, you can think about an anchor as a room, okay? Anchor captures the room and allows the SDK to like save the room, to register the room with the SDK. So the next time I'm gonna be in the same room and there is an anchor there, the SDK is gonna recognize it and push a notification to the user. Hey, there is an anchor here and I recognize that anchor, and it will give it back to me. So anchor supposed to be like, we instruct the developers to have one anchor per room of, let's say, 3 square feet, I think, something like that. Okay. So what I'm doing here, because it's a sample app, I decided to have one anchor. So the whole application, it doesn't matter how many objects, how many boxes I'm gonna put in the room, I'm gonna use only one anchor, because my assumption is that this app is gonna be used only in one room. Of course, it's up to the developer, but in this case, I'm the developer and I wanted just to showcase how to use the anchor. Okay, so this is the anchor, and here instantiate. So instantiate is a function of Unity, and what it does, it takes a class, in this case, reset anchor prefab, and this class is going to be instantiated and put into anchor. Don't worry if you don't understand the details, because we're going to get back to them. Okay, we're going to get back to the anchor prefab. The only thing I want you to take from here is there is only one anchor, and you only need one anchor per room. Okay, that's all I want you to get from here. So I do that once the engine is in it, and on mapping, I'm just changing the text of there is a status. Have you managed to run this sample app? Because I'm not sure. My assumption was that you did.
Yeah, we ran the sample app. We couldn't get the camera working.
Oh.
When we were running it. So we have like the cube showing up, but not the camera.
Okay, so, okay, 1 second. I'm gonna share my whole screen, so don't get panic about all the mess that I have here. So, okay, I'm gonna share it all. So, do you see my screen now? So, okay, so in Unity, first, I'm gonna tell you why you didn't see it. You just saw a black screen, right? So if you go to edit and project settings, you're gonna see here, XR plugin management, okay? And what you need to do is to tap both, to check both initialize XR and startup and the AirKit provider, okay? And then it's gonna take some time. You're gonna see here to the right, you're gonna see like a processing sign, okay? You're gonna have to wait till it finishes, and then you can rebuild and install, and hopefully you're gonna see it. And this section I added to our website. So if you're gonna go there now, you're gonna see it as part of our tutorial, okay? So even if you don't remember that, don't worry, we have that covered. So as I said before, you see here that I used let's say here, the camera manager. Remember that in our code, I referenced the camera manager, and I told you that it's serialized field. So here you can see where I initialized it here, okay? And how did I do that? You see that when I click on it, it kind of pops to the left, the air camera. Do you see that? Okay. So the way I did it was, I could just, like you could drag and drop. I could drag the air camera and put it here, okay? And that's the way I initialize things between the objects. If I have them in the scene, I don't need to try and add code. I could just use the drag and drop. And that's what I did. So I have my air camera. I have my librecite, which is also an object that has the librecite script. And all I did, I wanted to have a reference to it. So I just dragged and dropped it here, okay? That's all. It's a very simple thing. So you see, this is a very simple app. All it does is initializing librecite, okay? And the other thing it does, it it has a code that runs in update. So you see, I added this comment that says update is called once per frame. So update is the function. You remember that before I told you that each tick you need to do something, like you have a rate in which you have to do something. So the update function is a function that is derived from mono behavior, and Unity ensures you that every tick is gonna be called. Okay, so update is gonna be called every tick. So now what I'm gonna do. So first I check if there is an anchor. And why is that? Because if there is no anchor, I can't start adding user information or cubes to the scene, because as I told you, the fundamental object of reset is an anchor. So without an anchor, I don't have any other way to register objects to the SDK. So you can think about the anchor as the root object of the SDK, okay? So first I check if there is an anchor, and then if there is an anchor, this code, all it does is looking for a tap on the screen, okay? So you see here, I ask the operating system, which is Unity, I ask it, tell me if there is a touch which is in a touch phase began. And this is something that is, it's a pure Unity, nothing that I didn't invent it. So if you were to develop your own app and you were thinking, okay, I want to add some tap gesture to my app, you would go to their documentation, and that would be the first one will come up once you Google it, okay? So I just used it. So, and here it's why it is the, it's not a magic, but this is something that you need to understand. So you remember that our screen is a 2D plane, right? If you think about your iPhone, the screen is flat, right? And you have a 2D screen. But our world have another dimension, right? Depth. So what we need to do is to take the 2D coordinate that the user touched, and we need to move it into the world, right? We need to transform it into a 3D location, okay? And when you come to think about it, when you look at something at your distance, okay, your eyes, you understand somehow you understand that there is a depth. So you understand that something is further away than something else, because you have two eyes and you do this stereo thing. I don't want to get into that, but in order to do that in a code, you need to translate the 2D coordinates into a 3D one, okay? So you do that by creating an array. An array, you can think about it, if my user touched the screen at a certain point, you can think about an infinite array getting from the middle of the screen and going in the direction of the touch and goes all the way to the world, okay? You can think about like an array coming from the center of the camera towards the world and giving me back all the objects that it has intersected with, okay? In my case, I didn't really care about objects, and to be frank, and when I developed this app, there wasn't any active sensor to tell me if I intersect anything in the real world. You need to understand that in order to give me that information, that ray has to understand if it touched something. So you think about it like a laser, okay? So the laser, it has it tells me if I really touch a real object, because it has a time of flight, right? The time that the ray come back to the sensor, it can give me that. But when I developed that app, I didn't have that information. And I didn't really care, because all I wanted to do is to place that object in a fixed distance in front of the camera. So what I did, I took that ray, okay, and I just, okay, I don't care about the intersections and things. I just want a point that sits on the ray in a 30 centimeters in front of that ray. And you need to understand that in Unity, everything is in centimeters, meters, okay? That's the metric, okay? So I took the array, I took the position on the array that is 30 centimeters in front of the camera, okay? And again, I instantiate a cube prefab, okay? And what is a cube prefab? Now we're gonna go to, okay, we're gonna get to that. So now I have a cube, don't worry about that. So I have a cube, and that cube is located 30 centimeters in front of me, okay? And now what I do, I register the cube with the anchor. You see, I'm telling the cube that its parent is the anchor, okay? And this is the most important, I think, part of the code. Here, all the magic is done. Once the cube is, once I place the cube under the anchor, and I admit that it's a bit confusing because you see the cube tells who is its parent, and not the parent says you're my child, okay? You are my parent. Anchor, you are my parent. And this thing registered the cube under the anchor, okay? And that's it. So all the app, what it does, every frame, if there is a touch, it instantiates a cube and place it the anchor. So a single anchor can have multiple cubes, okay? And that's it, that's all. And now we need to go back and understand two things. First, we need to understand what is a cube prefab, okay? And the other thing we need to understand is this function, which I formally told you that we'll go back to it. So now it's the time to go back to it. So you see here, so you remember that I told you that if there is an anchor, our SDK can recognize it, because if it's registered with the SDK, I call here in my room, and I went out of the room, they came back, okay? Let's say not even me, my daughter, okay? So she came back to the room, and our SDK knows that there is an anchor here. So it notifies the app, hey, there is an anchor here that are connected to that anchor. But our SDK doesn't have the information of how that object is going to be rendered in the scene, right? Because we don't handle 3D, we don't handle rendering information. Like, you know, we don't know the color, we don't know the mesh, we don't know the polygons that are comprising the objects. And like the SDK doesn't care about that. All it cares is about positioning, okay? So it needs to know how to instantiate a Unity object once there is an anchor, okay? So you see here, there is a data, and that data is a previous data, and I'm gonna tell you how I did that in a way, in a minute. But you can assume now that there is a data that is previously being uploaded by me, okay? And that data is a stream of bytes, okay? You see an array of bytes. What I do, I decode, like, you know, have you learned about serialization and deserialization when you have a binary object and you need to save it somehow? Let's say you need to save it to a database, or you need to save it to, I don't know, to a file, right? So an object is a binary thing. If you want to take a binary and put it into a string, you need to serialize it. And by serializing, I mean, you go over the parts and you have some protocol and you say, okay, if I see that attribute, I'm gonna put the name of the attribute and the value. And you can think about it like a dictionary, okay? So I put a dictionary of things and I can save that. So if later on I want to load it, I'm gonna look at the transcript of how to construct the object, and I'm gonna construct it and I'm gonna get it back, okay? So decoding is exactly that thing, okay? Decoding goes over the data and understands how to load the information in order to instantiate the cube, okay? Purva, I see that you are like, are we all good? Yeah? Feel free to.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Good. Just Ari, we have a few more minutes for the Zoom time, so just decide when you want to stop and send a new link or stuff.
Okay. So maybe now it's going to be a good time to reinitialize the session, right? So we're going to stop here. We're going to